A massive wall of dark green ocean water suddenly pulls backward away from the Florida shoreline, exposing wet sand that has never seen the sun. At that exact same second, 2,000 miles away in the underground bunker of the Space Weather Prediction Center in Colorado, red warning lights flash across 5 computer screens. 2 completely separate national emergency alarm systems just went off at the very same moment, warning of 2 totally different disasters racing toward the United States. Nobody designed our modern power lines, roads, hospitals, or emergency teams to handle both of these giant natural engines hitting their highest gear at once. But right now, that is the exact danger unfolding across the country. If you love exploring real science, strange Earth mysteries, and the untold stories behind how our universe actually works without dramatic exaggeration or clickbait, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. We dig deep into real facts and verified data, so join our community of curious thinkers and never miss a deep breakdown. To understand why this double event caught the best emergency planners completely off guard, we need to take a step back and look at how our society was built to handle natural danger. For more than 100 years, city engineers, disaster managers, fire departments, and government rescue teams operated under a very simple rule. They always believed that nature would fight fair, sending only one major emergency at a time, giving us time to recover, rebuild, and reset before the next one struck. If a massive tropical hurricane spun across the coast, every available bucket truck, rescue helicopter, medical team, and federal supply chain rushed toward the flooded coastline. If a dry heat wave or a power problem struck the Midwest, electrical engineers focused all their attention and tools on high-voltage transmission lines and giant cooling towers. For several decades, this one crisis at a time safety plan worked well enough to keep our towns and cities safe and running smoothly. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which most people call NOAA, spent decades studying the physics of ocean water, wind currents, and rain clouds. At the same time, specialized astrophysicists and space weather scientists worked in completely separate buildings, tracking solar magnetic flares and charged particles coming from outer space. Each group had its own research budget, ran its own software models, and published its discoveries in separate scientific journals that the other group rarely read. The entire foundation of modern safety was built on the quiet assumption that ocean storms and space storms were 2 completely separate worlds that would never cross paths. That comfortable assumption completely broke down during a historic series of events that swept across the North American continent. What hit the United States was not an ordinary run of bad weather, but a massive compound disaster where 2 distinct planetary forces collided at full speed. Down on the surface, an atmospheric low-pressure system drifted over an unusually warm stretch of Atlantic Ocean water, quickly turning into a destructive monster storm. At the very same moment, 93 million miles away in outer space, the sun released a massive blast of charged particles, firing a giant cloud of magnetic energy straight toward Earth. When these 2 energetic giants struck the country at the exact same hour, the critical infrastructure that keeps modern society running began to bend and snap under the strain. To understand the full scale of what happened on the ground, look first at the coastal storm as it gathered power over the deep ocean. Meteorologists, staring at live satellite feeds in Florida, originally calculated that the swirling storm clouds would take 3 or 4 full days to develop into a dangerous hurricane. That 3-day warning window was the key foundation of the entire evacuation plan, giving families time to pack their bags and highway patrols, time to clear evacuation routes. However, when the center of the storm passed over coastal waters that were sitting near 90 degrees Fahrenheit, the timeline broke down completely. That hot water acted like high-octane rocket fuel, dumping massive amounts of heat and steam directly into the spinning heart of the storm. Within a single 24-hour window, the wind speeds inside the hurricane jumped by more than 50 miles per hour. In weather science, this sudden dangerous leap in power is known as rapid intensification, and it is one of the hardest natural events to predict accurately. Instead of having 3 days to prepare for a mild Category 1 storm, coastal communities were suddenly staring down a monstrous Category 4 storm with only hours left to act. Gas stations along the highways ran out of gasoline. Traffic backed up for dozens of miles, and hundreds of thousands of people found themselves stuck in gridlock. Emergency managers were forced to tell entire neighborhoods that it was too late to leave and that they had to shelter in place as the storm bore down on them. While families on the coast were boarding up windows, space weather scientists in Colorado were watching a very different threat erupt on the surface of the sun. A massive cluster of sunspots, which are dark, magnetically tangled regions larger than the entire planet Earth, had been building up extreme tension for days. Without any clear warning, those twisted magnetic field lines snapped and reconnected, unleashing an X-class solar flare along with a powerful coronal mass ejection. A coronal mass ejection is an enormous bubble containing billions of tons of superheated gas and magnetized particles fired out into deep space at blistering speed. Space monitoring satellites track this particular magnetic cloud moving through the void at more than 1,500 miles every single second. At that extreme speed, the solar wave crossed the 93 million miles between the Sun and Earth in less than 2 days. When a coronal mass ejection reaches our planet, it slams directly into the magnetosphere, the invisible magnetic shield that surrounds Earth and protects us from cosmic radiation. The impact pushes Earth's magnetic bubble inward on the side facing the Sun and stretches it out like a rubber band on the dark night side. As the stretched magnetic field vibrates and snaps back into place, it creates powerful electrical currents in the upper atmosphere and deep inside the solid crust of the Earth. Scientists call this entire disturbance a geomagnetic storm, and its invisible electrical waves can travel directly into our modern electrical power grids. Have you ever been caught in a sudden power outage during a violent storm and wondered what would happen if the electricity stayed off for weeks? Tell us your experience in the comments below. Give this video a quick like if you want more deep dives into the hidden forces of Earth and space. Under normal peaceful conditions, a strong geomagnetic storm puts on a harmless, beautiful light show, creating colorful northern lights across the night sky. However, deep inside our modern electric grids, the same magnetic energy creates a dangerous hidden danger known as geomagnetically induced currents. Because the solid ground beneath our feet becomes electrically charged during a space storm, that extra current searches for the path of least resistance to travel across long distances. The path of least resistance happens to be the high-voltage copper and aluminum transmission lines that carry electricity between major cities and regional power plants. These unwanted currents flow straight into giant substation transformers, which are precision machines designed to handle only alternating current, not direct currents from space. When direct current from a solar storm enters an iron transformer core, it causes the giant metal components to heat up rapidly and vibrate violently. If the current stays high, the specialized cooling oil inside the transformer can boil, melting the delicate insulation around the wires and destroying the machine forever. To stop this from happening, power grid operators rely on computer systems and skilled technicians who manually shift electricity from one power line to another. By moving power into areas with lower ground currents, engineers can spread out the electrical tension and keep their heavy transformers cool and safe from blowing out. This delicate balancing routine works only when all transmission lines are standing and engineers have clear, uninterrupted communication across state borders. Here is the exact detail that turned a rough storm day into a historic national emergency across several major states. Just as the solar storm began driving massive extra currents into the North American power grid, the coastal hurricane made its violent landfall on the southern coast. The hurricane's intense winds tore down dozens of high-voltage transmission towers, snapping the exact backup lines engineers needed to redirect the solar power surge. Grid operators suddenly lost their safety escape valves. The extra electricity from the solar storm had nowhere to go except straight into local substations, already damaged by wind. Within minutes, several major regional transformers began to overheat, tripping automatic safety switches that plunged millions of homes into total darkness far away from the hurricane. The chaos did not stop with the metal transmission lines on the surface of the ground. It quickly reached the upper layers of Earth's atmosphere. The solar storm hammered the ionosphere, an electrically charged layer of thin air located between 50 and 600 miles above our heads. The ionosphere acts like a giant natural mirror for long-distance radio signals, reflecting high-frequency transmissions over the horizon so emergency crews can talk to each other. When solar radiation disrupts this layer, high-frequency radio channels fill with deafening static, and satellite signals passing through the ionosphere become delayed and distorted. This distortion causes a dangerous problem known as GPS drift, where satellite navigation devices show locations that are off by dozens of yards. Imagine being a rescue helicopter pilot or a shallow water boat driver trying to find a family trapped on a flooded roof in the middle of torrential rain. Your primary navigation screens are giving incorrect coordinates due to satellite distortion, and your long-range radio is blocked by solar radio noise. At the same time, the local cell phone towers on the ground have lost their connection to central communication networks because regional power hubs are completely dead. Rescue teams were forced to rely on paper maps and visual landmarks in neighborhoods where street signs were underwater and normal roads were totally submerged. The simultaneous space storm had effectively blinded and deafened the very navigation and communication tools built to rescue people from the surface hurricane. Consider the compounding stress placed on regional hospitals and medical facilities during those critical first 48 hours of the double impact. Hospitals are required by law to keep backup diesel generators running, so life-saving equipment stays powered during ordinary storm blackouts. These diesel engines rely on steady deliveries of fuel, which must arrive by tanker truck if a power outage lasts longer than a couple of days. Because the solar surge knocked out digital payment systems and electric fuel pumps at regional storage depots, delivery trucks could not pump fuel into their tanks. Hospital directors had to make agonizing choices about which rooms to keep powered, rationing electricity for baby incubators and breathing machines while shutting down air conditioning and lights. For generations, emergency management books treated every type of natural disaster as an isolated problem that could be handled on its own. There were hurricane experts, flood specialists, earthquake engineers, and space weather scientists, each working inside their own narrow lane of research. The mathematical models they used to estimate risk assumed that the chance of two extreme events hitting the country at the exact same hour was close to zero. However, nature does not follow the neat chapters written in university textbooks or the separate departments of government agencies. When multiple complex planetary systems change at the same time, their destructive effects do not just add together, they multiply into an overwhelming crisis. Scientific teams at top national laboratories are now digging through the sensor data recorded during that week, and what they are finding is deeply concerning. Researchers at the National Center for Atmospheric Research have long studied how the upper atmosphere interacts with the lower troposphere, where clouds and rain form. When a huge burst of solar particles enters the upper air, it changes the electrical charge between the ionosphere high above and the ground down below. Some scientists are currently investigating whether these large-scale electrical shifts can influence cloud physics, potentially increasing lightning strikes and rainfall in severe storms. While research into these exact connections is still ongoing, it is clear that Earth's atmosphere operates as one continuous, deeply connected machine. Did you know that space weather could disable ground infrastructure and emergency rescue operations this heavily? Or did you think solar storms were completely harmless to people on Earth? Share your perspective in the comments section below, and if you're finding this breakdown helpful, take a second to subscribe so you can follow our upcoming investigations. To understand why these double disasters are becoming a bigger threat right now, we have to look at the massive natural cycles driving our sun and our planet. Our sun follows a regular 11-year cycle of magnetic activity, swinging back and forth between periods of quiet calm and periods of violent unrest. During the peak of this cycle, known as solar maximum, the sun's magnetic field flips completely, creating dozens of active sunspot regions across its glowing surface. We are currently moving through solar cycle 25, a cycle that has produced far more sunspots and powerful flares than early scientific forecasts predicted. This heightened solar activity means our planet is taking direct hits from space weather much more often than it did just a few years ago. While the sun is going through its natural magnetic peak, Earth's oceans are storing record amounts of excess heat energy beneath the waves. Over the past several years, ocean surface temperatures across the tropical Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Pacific have repeatedly set all-time records. Warm ocean water provides the thermal energy that powers tropical cyclones, supplying the warm steam and upward lift that makes storms grow larger and drop more rain. When atmospheric storms pass over these marine heat waves, they have a much higher chance of undergoing rapid intensification right before hitting land. With an active sun launching solar storms and an overheated ocean spinning up monster hurricanes, the statistical window for simultaneous impacts opens much wider. The true vulnerability of our world, however, does not come only from the raw power of nature. It comes from the delicate design of our modern technology. Over the last 50 years, human society has built an intricate, deeply connected web of silicon microchips, fiber optic glass lines, high voltage wires, and orbiting satellites. Every critical service we depend on for daily survival, clean tap water, sewage treatment, grocery deliveries, banking systems, and medical care, relies on this electrical web. If a local supermarket loses power and internet access, its registers freeze, refrigerated food spoils, delivery trucks cannot be dispatched, and shelves go empty in days. Our ancestors lived in towns with local food gardens, hand-pumped water wells, and mechanical tools that did not stop working when an electrical surge swept through the sky. Today, our entire way of life depends on massive industrial machines that are surprisingly difficult to build, transport, and replace when they break. Consider the giant high-voltage step-up transformers that sit at the center of our national power substations, quietly managing electricity for millions of homes. A single one of these custom-engineered units can weigh more than 400,000 pounds, requiring specialized rail cars, heavy cranes, and police escorts just to move. There are only a few specialized manufacturing factories in the entire world capable of building these complex machines, and the waiting list for a new one is over 2 years. If a compound disaster destroys 20 or 30 of these giant transformers at once, the affected regions could face rolling blackouts for many months. This fragile setup leads to what systems engineers call a cascading failure, where an initial small breakdown triggers a chain reaction of collapses across unrelated systems. During the recent double disaster, the loss of main electrical power forced cellular phone towers to switch immediately to their backup battery systems. Most cell tower battery banks are built to supply power for only 4 to 8 hours, just long enough to handle routine local repairs under normal conditions. Because the geomagnetic storm scrambled communication between repair crews and dispatchers, line workers could not navigate through the debris to restore power in time. As the backup batteries ran completely dry one by one, millions of people lost all cell service right when local rivers began overflowing their banks. Inside emergency planning rooms at the highest levels of government, the lessons learned from this event are forcing a complete overhaul of safety playbooks. Officials at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, known to everyone as FEMA, are realizing that traditional response timelines are no longer realistic. In the past, emergency agencies planned relief efforts assuming that neighboring states could always send utility crews, food supplies, and medical teams to help. In a compound disaster, however, the neighboring state may be dealing with its own knocked-out power substations, broken water pipes, and scrambled transportation networks. Planners are now running emergency simulations where disaster teams must operate in completely dark environments with zero outside support for weeks at a time. What do you think would be the hardest part of surviving for 2 weeks without electricity or running water or cell phone service? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below, and if you are enjoying this deep look behind the scenes of modern Earth science, hit that like button to support the channel. The danger of simultaneous disasters reaches far beyond the surface of the ground, extending all the way in a low Earth orbit above our atmosphere. There are currently more than 10,000 active satellites circling our planet, providing global positioning data, weather imaging, and high-speed internet links. When a major solar storm hits Earth, the sudden wave of energetic particles heats the upper atmosphere, causing the thin layers of air to expand upward like a dome. Satellites that were smoothly orbiting through empty space suddenly encounter increased atmospheric density, creating extra friction known in physics as orbital drag. This drag slows the satellites down, causing their flight paths to drop and pulling them closer toward Earth's dense atmosphere where they risk burning up. During severe space weather events, satellite operators must constantly fire onboard thrusters just to keep their altitude and avoid hitting neighboring pieces of space debris. If a powerful hurricane is barreling toward land at that exact moment, meteorologists on the ground need those weather satellites to track cloud tops and wind speeds. If those observation satellites are forced into protective safe modes to prevent their sensitive electronics from frying, forecasters lose critical real-time data. Without live satellite observations, computer forecast models lose their accuracy, leaving emergency managers unsure of where a storm will hit until it reaches the coast. A disruption high up in space directly degrades our ability to protect human lives, homes, and emergency crews down on the surface of the Earth. This reality has led many engineers and scientists to call for a radical redesign of how we build and protect our national electrical infrastructure. One of the most promising ideas being tested right now is the development of resilient microgrids that can operate independently from the primary national grid. A microgrid is a localized energy system that combines local power generation, such as neighborhood solar panels or small wind turbines, with large industrial battery storage banks. During normal days, the microgrid stays connected to the main regional power system, sharing electricity and lowering costs for everyone in the area. However, when a geomagnetic disturbance or a severe storm threatens the main grid, the microgrid can automatically disconnect, an action known as islanding. By islanding itself, the local community shields its delicate electrical transformers from dangerous solar currents traveling along long-distance high-voltage lines. Critical facilities within that microgrid, including local community hospitals, water treatment plants, fire stations, and emergency shelters, can keep running without interruption. While microgrids cannot power heavy steel factories on their own, they provide a vital safety net that keeps basic human life support systems functional during prolonged crises. Several small towns, rural hospitals, and military bases have already started building these resilient systems. But upgrading an entire country will require massive investment. The technology to protect our communities exists right now, but the challenge lies in building it before the next major compound disaster arrives. Alongside infrastructure improvements on the ground, scientists are working hard to build better early warning networks that connect deep space with ocean science. Right now, space weather satellites sitting at the Lagrange 1 point, a million miles between Earth and the Sun, give us only 30 to 60 minutes of warning before a solar wave hits. Researchers are proposing new deep space monitoring probes equipped with advanced cameras that can track solar plasma eruptions the moment they leave the sun's surface. That would give power grid operators 2 to 3 full days of warning, allowing them to adjust transmission loads and install protective grounding hardware ahead of time. Simultaneously, oceanographers are deploying autonomous underwater gliders to monitor deep ocean temperatures, giving meteorologists earlier warnings about rapid hurricane growth. Connecting these two separate fields of science into a single, unified early warning framework is one of the most urgent scientific tasks of our time. For centuries, human beings studied the sky, the sea, and the space above as separate, unconnected realms with their own independent behaviors and rules. We built our cities, our communication networks, and our disaster plans around the comforting idea that we could handle nature's challenges one at a time. The recent double disaster proved that our planet is a single, deeply connected system where deep-sea thermal currents and deep space magnetic storms can strike together. As our technology grows more complex and our climate continues to change, understanding these compound events is no longer just an interesting theoretical exercise. Look closely at what happens inside a modern city when both electricity and digital communications remain offline for more than 72 hours. The first system to show severe strain is always the municipal water supply, which relies on high-pressure electric pumps to push clean water through underground pipes. Without steady electrical power, water pressure drops quickly, allowing groundwater and bacteria to seep into aging water mains through microscopic cracks. Within 3 days, city officials are forced to issue boil water advisories to millions of residents, but boiling water requires electricity or natural gas that may not be available. People are left searching for bottled water at local stores that are already shuttered, turning a basic utility failure into an immediate public health emergency. At the same time, the modern food distribution chain operates on a strict just-in-time delivery schedule, meaning grocery stores keep only enough food for 3 days. When regional highways are blocked by storm debris and digital dispatch computers are knocked offline by solar interference, food delivery trucks cannot leave central warehouses. Even if a truck reaches a local store, the electric roll-up bay doors cannot open without power, and workers cannot scan inventory without working computer networks. Perishable items like milk, meat, and fresh produce spoil rapidly inside unpowered refrigerators, forcing store managers to throw away tons of usable food. Within less than a week, an entire metropolitan area can go from having abundant food choices to facing severe grocery shortages in every single neighborhood. Think about how this technological dependency affects our banking and financial networks, which have almost completely eliminated physical cash over the last 20 years. When local transmission lines fail and satellite links go down, point-of-sale card readers, automated teller machines, and mobile banking applications stop working entirely. People who have thousands of dollars in digital bank accounts suddenly find themselves unable to buy a $5 loaf of bread or a gallon of gasoline for their car. Small business owners who rely on electronic payments cannot pay their employees or purchase emergency repair supplies from wholesalers who demand immediate payment. The invisible electronic threads that hold our modern economy together can snap in an instant when two planetary systems unleash their energy at once. This brings us to the crucial concept of individual and community resilience in an era where compound natural disasters are becoming the new baseline reality. For many years, standard public safety brochures told families that storing 3 days of food and a few bottles of water was more than enough for any emergency. That old advice assumed that state and federal emergency convoys would always roll into town with hot meals, clean water, and mobile power generators by day 4. In a world where simultaneous space and ocean storms can paralyze multiple states at once, outside, help may take 10 to 14 days to reach your street. Families and neighborhoods that build local support networks, maintain emergency hand pumps, and store basic non-perishable supplies will be the ones that weather the storm safely. Consider how community emergency shelters must change their operational designs to survive these complex, multi-layered disaster scenarios in the coming decades. Traditional shelters are usually established inside local public school gymnasiums or community recreation centers, relying on temporary hookups to the main city power grid. When both the electrical grid and local water pressure collapse simultaneously, these giant gymnasiums quickly become dark, unheated, or dangerously hot holding pens. Architects and civil engineers are now designing modern resilient community hubs equipped with independent geothermal cooling, deep rainwater filtration systems, and solar microgrids. These upgraded buildings can serve as permanent safety islands for thousands of residents, providing clean drinking water, hot food, and medical charging stations indefinitely. Look at the role that amateur radio operators, often called ham radio operators, played during the darkest hours of this recent double disaster event. When commercial cell towers died and emergency satellite communications suffered from solar distortion, volunteer radio operators powered up their simple analog radios using 12-volt car batteries. Using low-frequency radio waves that travel along the curve of the Earth beneath the disrupted ionosphere, these volunteers relayed life-saving messages between isolated towns and rescue centers. They passed along requests for medical evacuations, reported broken dam spillways, and guided supply trucks around washed-out bridges when modern GPS navigation was completely useless. In a world driven by complex digital algorithms and microchips, simple 19th century analog radio technology proved to be one of the most reliable lifelines we have. This remarkable reliance on low-tech solutions reveals a profound truth about how modern society must approach disaster preparedness moving into the future. While we should continue building advanced computer models, launching new satellites, and engineering smarter power grids, we must never abandon robust analog backup systems. Every critical control room, nuclear power plant, hospital, and water treatment facility must maintain physical manual switches that human hands can operate without computers. Every emergency operations center must keep detailed paper maps, mechanical water testing kits, and independent radio equipment that cannot be wiped out by a magnetic pulse. True resilience does not mean relying solely on more complicated technology. It means having simple, indestructible backup plans when complicated technology inevitably fails. What steps have you or your family taken to prepare for a multi-day emergency where power, water, and cell service are all knocked out at once? Share your best preparedness tips and ideas in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the like button if you believe more people need to understand these real-world risks. As we look ahead toward the rest of Solar Cycle 25 and the coming hurricane seasons, the scientific community is racing against the clock to upgrade our defense tools. Universities and government agencies across North America and Europe are setting up joint research centers that bring space physicists and atmospheric scientists together. These multidisciplinary teams are building new artificial intelligence models that can analyze ocean surface temperatures, upper air winds, and solar magnetic data all at the same time. By feeding decades of space weather logs and tropical storm records into these powerful neural networks, researchers hope to spot hidden patterns that humans might miss. If an artificial intelligence system can give grid operators a 48-hour warning that a solar surge will strike during a hurricane, millions of transformers can be saved. At the same time, power utility companies are beginning to install specialized neutral ground blocking devices on their largest high-voltage transmission transformers. These devices act like electrical one-way valves, allowing normal alternating current to flow into the ground while blocking direct currents caused by geomagnetic storms from space. Installing a single blocking device costs a fraction of what it takes to replace a destroyed multi-million-dollar transformer, but outfitting thousands of substations takes time and steady funding. Several utility consortiums have started installing these protective devices at high-risk substations along the coast and near major population centers as a crucial first step. Every transformer protected by one of these blocking valves is one less machine that can blow out during a future compound solar and weather disaster. This ongoing struggle between human engineering and the immense power of planetary physics teaches us a valuable lesson about humility and our place in the cosmos. We live in an extraordinary high-tech era where we can talk across oceans in milliseconds, launch reusable rockets into space, and carry the sum of human knowledge in our pockets. Yet, all of our brilliant digital machines rest on a thin, fragile crust of rock floating through an active and energetic solar neighborhood filled with immense physical forces. The giant thermal currents that churn our oceans and the violent magnetic storms that erupt on the surface of the sun do not pause for our work schedules or our power grids. Understanding how deeply connected our atmosphere is to outer space is not just an interesting scientific topic, it is the fundamental key to protecting modern human civilization. When we look up at the sky during a peaceful sunset, or watch the glowing colors of the northern lights dancing across the northern horizon, we are seeing the outer edge of this giant machine. The same sun that warms our crops and lights our days possesses magnetic forces capable of bending our modern infrastructure in a matter of minutes. The same ocean that feeds millions of people and moderates our climate can gather staggering amounts of heat energy and launch powerful storms against our coasts. By studying these natural systems with honesty, clear data, and open minds, we can learn to build cities, power networks, and communities that can stand strong against any double impact. The future of human safety depends on our willingness to recognize these connections and prepare for the unexpected before the next double warning alarm begins to sound. If you made it all the way through to the end of this deep investigation, you are someone who truly values factual, in-depth science and the untold mechanics of our living planet. Please take a moment right now to hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell so you never miss an upcoming release, and share this video with a friend or a family member who loves real-world discoveries. Drop a comment down below answering this question. Do you think our modern power grids and cities are ready for a major simultaneous disaster? Or do we need to completely rethink our infrastructure from the ground up? Thank you so much for watching. Keep your curiosity alive and take care.